2 years back, Bennetts fell apart like a deck of cards in a windstorm. I've been trying to pick up the pieces ever since. Late night calls, Christmas cards nobody answers, anything to keep us from turning into strangers. I'm Noah Bennett, 27, a sommelier who's better at pairing wines than mending family fights. I'm scraping by in San Francisco, pouring overpriced Pinot for tech bros, but the real work is keeping the Bennetts together. So I planned a weekend at our Napa Valley vineyard to scatter Dad's ashes. Bennett Vines isn't just a business, it's Dad's whole life. Acres of grapes he tended like kids. I figured one weekend could bring us back to what we were. I was so damn wrong. The vineyard looks the same as ever. Rows of vines snake across the hills, leaves catching the late October light. The air smells like ripe fruit and dirt, the kind of smell that sticks in your throat. I got here yesterday, sweeping out the tasting room, wiping down the long oak bar, making sure the guest house didn't smell like mildew. I kept stopping to look at Dad's picture on the mantle, him grinning at my first harvest, both of us covered in grape juice, his eyes saying he believed in me. This weekend's for him, for us. I could see it. Mom fussing over the cheese platter, Lucas cracking open a bottle of our best Cabernet, Elise doodling vines in her sketchbook. Even Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister and partner in the vineyard, might tell stories about the early days when they were just two kids with a crazy dream. I wanted us to be a family again, just for a couple days. Then I found something in the cellar that turned everything upside down. I was down there last night looking for the old oak cask Dad used to store his favorite bottles, thinking we could use it for his ashes. The cellar's a maze. Barrels stacked to the ceiling, stone walls slick with damp, the whole place smelling like earth and secrets. I was shoving crates around when I noticed a rusted safe, small and square, wedged behind a barrel like someone didn't want it found. My gut told me it was trouble, but Dad was always hiding stuff. Easter eggs, birthday notes. So I grabbed a crowbar from the tool rack and pried it open. Inside was one piece of paper, a contract, old and creased, written in Dad's slanted handwriting. I sat on a crate and read it, my stomach twisting with every word. Noah, it said, if you're reading this, I'm not here anymore. The vineyard's our legacy, yours to keep safe. Margaret forged papers to take half the profits, even though she never put in a dime. The proof's in the ledgers hidden here. She'll do anything to hold on to her share. Watch out. She's not who you think. I'm counting on you to fix this. Love, Dad. Forged papers? I leaned back, the paper crinkling in my fist. Bennett Vines was everything to Dad. He planted every vine, bottled every dream. It's worth millions now, but we've been drowning in debt since he died, and I thought it was just bad luck. Margaret, though? She's been part of this since day one. Her name on the labels, her laugh in every old photo. She's family. But Dad's words didn't lie. He'd get this look sometimes when Margaret pushed for bigger deals, like he was swallowing something bitter. Did she really screw him over for money? Why keep it from me until now? I stuffed the contract in my jacket, my head spinning. The cellar felt too small, the vineyard too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I wanted to think it was a mistake, that Margaret wouldn't betray us. But as I climbed the stairs, the whole place seemed different, like the vines were whispering something I wasn't ready to hear. I didn't sleep much, just lay there, Dad's note burning a hole in my mind. She's not who you think. Morning came, and I heard tires on the gravel outside the tasting room. I stood on the porch, the contract heavy in my pocket, watching Mom's old sedan pull up, then Lucas's fancy BMW, Elise's rattling van. Margaret's Mercedes rolled in last. Her son, Daniel, slouched beside her. Everyone was smiling, hugging, talking over each other, but I couldn't stop staring at Margaret. Her laugh was loud, her eyes scanning the vines like she owned them. I faked a smile, my chest tight with something between fear and anger. Have your fun, I thought, because by the end of this weekend, I'm digging up the truth, and it's gonna hurt. The vineyard was alive by noon, workers clipping vines under the Napa sun, their shears snipping like a metronome. I stood outside the tasting room, the contract still stuffed in my jacket, its edges digging into my side like a splinter. The air smelled of crushed grapes and warm earth, but the guest house behind me, a squat stone building Dad built for family weekends, felt heavy, like it was holding grudges in its walls. I wanted this weekend to be about Dad, about scattering his ashes and remembering the guy who'd dance in the dirt during harvest. But that damn contract kept whispering, "Margaret screwed him, and she's not done." I pushed the thought down, forcing a smile as Mom's sedan crunched up the drive. Clara stepped out first, her gray hair loose, her face tired but soft, like she was carrying Dad's memory in her eyes. "Noah, you've outdone yourself," she said, pulling me into a hug that smelled of lavender and coffee. She held on a second too long, like she was afraid I'd vanish. "Your dad would love this." Her voice cracked and I nodded, swallowing hard. Mom always clung to the past. Dad's laugh, his bad puns, the way he'd name each vine row after us kids. I guided her inside where I'd set up a table with cheese, olives, and a bottle of our 2015 Cabernet, Dad's favorite. Lucas rolled in next, his BMW kicking up dust. My brother, 35, corporate lawyer, all sharp suits and sharper edges. He didn't hug me, just gave a quick nod, his phone already buzzing. "Place looks good, Noah," he said, but his eyes were on the vineyard like he was calculating its worth. Lucas hadn't been back since Dad's funeral, always too busy with his San Diego firm. Last time we talked, he called the vineyard a money pit. I bit my tongue, pointing him to the wine. He poured a glass, barely looking at me, and started muttering about balance sheets. Typical Lucas, more numbers than heart. Elisa's van screeched in after, paint splattered and rattling like it might fall apart. My sister, 31, climbed out, her dark hair in a messy bun, sketchbook tucked under her arm. "God, it's gorgeous here," she said, grinning, but her eyes were stormy. Elise, the artist, always felt everything too much. She hugged me hard, then spotted Margaret's car pulling in and stiffened. "Great, the Queen arrives," she muttered. Elise never liked Margaret, said she acted like the vineyard was hers alone. I shrugged, trying to keep things light, but her words stuck like burrs. Margaret's Mercedes gleamed as it parked, and she stepped out, 60 but moving like she was 40, her silk scarf catching the breeze. Her smile was wide, practiced, the kind you see on wine labels. "Noah, darling," she said, air kissing my cheek, her perfume sharp and expensive. "You've brought us together. Thomas would be proud." Her words sounded right, but her eyes flicked to the cellar door, quick and calculating. Her son, Daniel, 25, trailed behind, lanky and quiet, his hands jammed in his pockets. He gave me a nervous wave, avoiding my gaze like he knew something I didn't. My stomach twisted, but I played along, ushering everyone to the tasting room. Inside, the mood was warm, at least on the surface. The oak bar was piled with glasses, the stone walls hung with Dad's old harvest photos, him and Margaret toasting, arms around each other, back when the vineyard was just dirt and hope. Laughter bounced around, Mom telling a story about Dad burning a batch of Merlot, Elise sketching the view. But I couldn't relax. I kept watching Margaret, her charm dialed up too high, like she was performing. When I raised a glass for a toast, to Dad, who made this place home, everyone joined in, but Margaret's speech stole the show. "To Thomas," she said, her voice smooth as syrup, "and our shared sacrifices. This vineyard's a testament to family." Shared sacrifices? The contract flashed in my mind, her forged papers, her stolen profits. Her words felt like a script, and Daniel's quick nod, like he'd heard it before, didn't help. Later, as we milled around the vines, I caught Margaret and Daniel by the cellar, their heads close, voices low. She was pointing at the stone wall, her gestures sharp, Daniel nodding fast like a kid caught stealing. When they saw me, Margaret's smile snapped back on, but Daniel's face went pale. "Just reminiscing," she said, looping her arm through his. I nodded, my jaw tight, and let them walk off. But my eyes stayed on her, catching how she scanned the vineyard, like she was marking territory. That evening, I overheard Lucas and Mom arguing in the guest house kitchen. I was grabbing more wine when Lucas's voice cut through. "We can't keep it, Mom. The debts are choking us. Margaret's right. Selling's the only way." Mom's reply was sharp. "This is Thomas's dream. You'd let her push us out?" Lucas sighed. Something about practicality, but Margaret's name hung heavy. Was she leaning on him to sell? The contract's warning, "She'll do anything," echoed, and I gripped the bottle too hard, nearly dropping it. All day, I wrestled with what to do. Confront Margaret now? Ruin the memorial? Or wait, watch. Let her slip up? Dad's note trusted me to fix this, but I felt like a kid playing chess against a pro. Still, I noticed things. Margaret's story about the vineyard's first harvest didn't match Mom's. Her date's off by a year. When I asked about the early days, her laugh was too quick, her answer vague. Elise caught it too, rolling her eyes behind Margaret's back. I wanted to pull her aside, tell her everything, but I held back. If Margaret was playing a game, I needed to be smarter. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered to the tasting room, the contract still in my pocket, its weight like a stone. The vineyard was quiet, stars sharp overhead, but something moved by the cellar. I froze, squinting through the dark. A flashlight beam danced across the stone wall. Margaret, alone, her scarf loose, sweeping the light like she was hunting for something. My mouth went dry. Was she looking for the ledgers Dad mentioned? I ducked behind a barrel, watching her pause, mutter to herself, then slip back toward the guest house. My fists clenched, the contract crinkling against my chest. Whatever she was after, I'd find it first, and when I did, she'd answer for what she'd done to Dad. The vineyard glowed under the Saturday morning sun, rows of vines stretching like green veins across the hills. Workers hauled baskets of grapes, their chatter mixing with the hum of a tractor in the distance. I stood outside the tasting room, the contract still in my jacket, its words like a bad taste I couldn't spit out. Margaret's flashlight in the cellar last night kept replaying in my head. She was hunting for something, and I'd bet my last dollar it was the ledgers Dad mentioned. The guest house buzzed with breakfast noise, Mom's laughter, Lucas's phone calls, but it all felt like a mask. I needed answers, and I wasn't waiting for Margaret to slip up again. I slipped away after breakfast, telling Mom I was checking the barrels. Instead, I headed to Dad's old office, a cramped room off the tasting room, stuffed with bookshelves and a desk buried under papers. The door creaked as I shut it, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of Dad's pipe tobacco. I started with the filing cabinet, flipping through yellowed invoices, tax forms, anything that might show Margaret's scam. My fingers moved past the contract's warning. She forged papers to take half the profits, driving me. In a bottom drawer under a stack of harvest logs, I found them. 3 leather-bound ledgers, their pages brittle. I cracked one open, scanning columns of numbers. There it was, Margaret's name, tied to 50% of the profits from 1995 on, but no record of her investing a cent. The numbers didn't add up. Her payouts were bleeding the vineyard dry, explaining the debts we couldn't shake. Tucked inside the last ledger was a folded note, Dad's handwriting shaky, like he wrote it in a hurry. "Noah, Margaret's greed will break us. The ledgers prove it. Protect what we built. I'm sorry I left this to you." I sat back, the paper crinkling in my hand, anger burning low in my gut. Dad knew, and he carried it alone. The vineyard tour that afternoon was supposed to be a highlight. Mom's idea, a walk through the rows to honor Dad. We gathered by the crush pad, the air heavy with fermenting fruit. Mom led the way, her voice soft as she pointed out Dad's favorite Pinot Blanc. Lucas trailed behind, typing on his phone, probably pricing the land. Elise sketched in her notebook, her jaw tight every time Margaret spoke. Margaret was all charm, tossing out stories about the vineyard's early days, but I caught her slipping. Said she and Dad broke ground in '92, when Mom swore it was 90. Elise noticed too, her eyes narrowing. "Funny how your memory's off," she snapped, loud enough for everyone to hear. Margaret laughed it off, but her smile was thin, like she was swallowing glass. Mom shot Elise a look, trying to keep the peace, but the air felt sharper, like a storm was brewing. Lucas didn't help. Halfway through the tour, he started in about the vineyard's finances, his voice carrying over the vines. "We're hemorrhaging money, Mom. Margaret's got a buyer lined up. Decent offer. We should take it." Mom stopped dead, her face pale. "Sell your father's dream? Over my body?" Lucas shrugged, glancing at Margaret, who nodded like they'd rehearsed it. I clenched my fists, the ledger's numbers flashing in my mind. Was Lucas in on her plan, or just her pawn? Daniel, lagging behind, kept his head down, his sneakers kicking dirt. He hadn't said 10 words to me all day, and when I tried to catch his eye, he bolted for the tasting room. I cornered him later by the barrel room, away from the others. "What's going on, Daniel?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He flinched, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Nothing, man. Just here for Dad." I stepped closer, not letting him squirm away. "You and Margaret were whispering by the cellar. She's hiding something, and you know it." His face crumpled, like he'd been waiting to crack. "She told me to keep quiet," he mumbled. "Said her business decisions were for the family, but she got mad when I asked about the old contracts. Said I'd lose everything if I talked." He looked at me, eyes wet. I didn't want to help her, Noah. I swear I nodded, my anger shifting to Margaret. Daniel was a kid caught in her web, but he'd just given me another piece of the puzzle. Dinner that night was a mess. We sat around the guest house dining table, candles flickering, plates piled with grilled steak and roasted figs. On the surface, it was perfect. Wine flowing, Mom telling stories about Dad's first harvest. But the cracks showed. Lucas kept pushing the sail, saying the vineyard was a sinking ship. Mom snapped back, her fork clattering. "You sound like Margaret, not your father." Margaret stayed calm, too calm, blaming the debts on Dad's poor planning. Her words were smooth, but they landed like darts. Elise slammed her glass down, wine sloshing. "You always make it about you, Margaret. Dad built this, not you." The table went quiet, everyone staring. Margaret's smile didn't budge, but her eyes flicked to me like she was measuring my silence. I kept my face blank, but my mind was screaming, "She's lying, and she knows I'm watching." After dinner, I couldn't sit still. I told Elise I was grabbing more firewood, but I went back to Dad's office, needing to dig deeper. The ledgers were still on the desk, and I was flipping through them when I heard the door creak. I ducked behind a bookshelf, holding my breath. Margaret slipped in, her scarf loose, a flashlight in her hand. She moved straight to the desk, rifling through papers, muttering to herself. "Where is it, Thomas?" she hissed, like he could answer. My chest tightened. She was after the ledgers or something else Dad hid. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, until she cursed under her breath and left, the door clicking shut. I waited a full minute, then crept out, my hands shaking as I locked the office behind me. Back in the tasting room, I poured a glass of Merlot, trying to steady myself. The ledgers, Daniel's confession, Margaret's sneaking, it all pointed to her betrayal, but I wasn't ready to blow this up. Not yet. Dad's note said he was counting on me, but I felt like a kid thrown into a fight I didn't understand. If I called her out now, would Mom believe me? Would Lucas take her side? Elise might, but the family was already splintering. I needed more proof, something undeniable. As I sipped the wine, I noticed something under the desk, a glint of metal. I knelt down, brushing away dust, and found a second safe, smaller than the first, locked tight. Scratched faintly on its surface were 2 letters. M.B. Margaret Bennett. My jaw tightened. She wasn't just hiding her past. She was guarding something else, and I was going to crack it open. The tasting room was a war zone waiting to ignite, its oak bar gleaming under flickering candles, the air thick with the smell of wine and wax. I stood at the head of the room, the first safe open on the table, its contract and ledgers stacked beside it. The second safe, with Margaret's initials scratched on it, sat locked, a silent threat. My jacket pocket held Dad's note, its words, "Protect what we built," like a fire in my chest. I'd called the family here saying we needed to talk about Dad's ashes, but that was a lie. This was about Margaret, her forged papers, the millions she'd siphoned from our vineyard. I'd spent all morning gathering proof, ledgers, Daniel's shaky confession, and a plan to crack that second safe. The Bennetts were about to face the truth, and it was going to hurt like hell. Mom sat closest, her gray hair catching the candlelight, her hands folded like she was bracing for bad news. Lucas leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his lawyer face on, ready to argue. Elise perched on the bar, sketchbook closed, her eyes already burning with the fight she sensed coming. Margaret and Daniel were last, her silk scarf perfect, her smile a polished mask. Daniel slouched, staring at his shoes like he wanted to disappear. The room was quiet, just the creak of the old floorboards and the distant hum of vineyard workers outside. I cleared my throat, my voice steady despite the knot in my gut. "Dad left us something," I said, holding up the contract. "Not just the vineyard, a truth we've been ignoring. Margaret's been stealing from us for 30 years. The room exploded. Lucas shot up, his chair scraping. "What the hell, Noah? You drag us here for this?" Elise's laugh was sharp, like she'd been waiting for it. "Knew it," she spat, glaring at Margaret. Mom's face went pale, her hands gripping the table. Margaret didn't move, her smile fixed, but her eyes flicked to Daniel, quick and hard. I pushed on, reading Dad's note aloud, my voice loud enough to cut through the noise. Margaret forged papers to take half the profits without putting in a dime. The ledgers show it. She's been draining us, leaving us with debts Dad never caused. I slapped the ledgers down. Pages open to her payouts, numbers circled in red. This is why we're drowning. Margaret stood, slow and deliberate, her laugh low, like I was a kid throwing a tantrum. "Noah, this is pathetic," she said, her voice smooth as the Cabernet on the bar. "You're waving around a fake letter, stirring up trouble to play hero. Your father trusted me, not you." She turned to the others, hands spread wide. "He's desperate to control the vineyard, make it his own. Don't fall for this." Her words landed like a punch, and I saw Mom hesitate, her eyes searching mine. Lucas nodded, his jaw tight. "She's right. This smells like a setup, Noah. You got proof, or just stories?" I was ready. I pulled Daniel into it, my voice firm. "Tell them, Daniel. What you told me about her business decisions." He froze, his face gray, but Margaret's glare was a blade. "Daniel, don't!" she snapped, but he stood, his hands shaking. "It's true," he mumbled, barely audible. "She made me keep quiet. Said she'd cut me off if I told anyone about the old contracts. She knew they were wrong." The room went still, like someone had sucked out the air. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came. Elise slammed her fist on the bar. "You lying snake," she hissed at Margaret. Margaret's smile cracked, just for a second, but she doubled down. "He's confused," she said, her voice rising. "Thomas and I built this vineyard together. I earned my share." Lucas started to nod, but I was done waiting. I grabbed the crowbar I'd hidden under the table and moved to the second safe. "Let's see what you're hiding, Margaret," I said, jamming the bar into the lock. It popped open with a groan, revealing a stack of papers, original ownership documents signed by Dad, showing he owned 100% of Bennett Vines. No Margaret, no partnership. Tucked inside was another note, Dad's writing faint but clear. I handed it to Mom, my voice soft. "Read it." Her hands shook as she unfolded it, her voice breaking as she read aloud. "Clara, forgive Margaret if you can, but don't let her take our home. The truth is here. Protect our kids, our vines. I love you." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she looked at Margaret, her voice cold. "You stole from him. From us." Margaret's face twisted, her charm gone. "I deserved it," she shouted. "Thomas was the dreamer, but I made this place work. Sleepless nights, deals he wouldn't touch. I took what was mine." The admission hung in the air, raw and ugly. Elise lunged forward, but I grabbed her arm. "She's done, Elise," I said. Lucas sat down, his face blank, like he'd just lost a case. "You played me," he muttered, looking at Margaret. Mom stood, her voice steady now. "Get out, Margaret. You're no sister to me." Daniel stepped toward Mom, his voice small. "I'm sorry. I'll make it right." Margaret laughed, bitter and sharp. "You're all fools clinging to a failing vineyard. Keep it. You'll lose everything." She grabbed her scarf and stormed out, the door slamming like a gunshot. The tasting room was quiet, the candles burning low. Mom clutched Dad's note, tears on her cheeks. Elise sank onto a stool, her anger spent. Lucas rubbed his face, muttering, "I should have seen it." Daniel stayed, head down, but close to us like he was choosing a side. The ledgers and papers lay scattered, proof of Margaret's betrayal, but also of Dad's trust in me. I looked at the family, broken, angry, but still here. "We're keeping the vineyard," I said, my voice rough. "For Dad. We'll figure out the debts, but it's ours. No more lies." Mom nodded, her hand finding mine. Elise gave a small smile, fierce and proud. Lucas sighed, but he didn't argue. I picked up the ownership papers, their weight heavy in my hands. Margaret was gone, her poison drained, but the fight wasn't over. The vineyard was ours, and I'd honor Dad's vision. Every vine, every bottle, every chance to be a family again. I folded Dad's note, tucking it beside the contract in my pocket. The truth was out, and it hurt, but it was ours to build on. The vineyard was quiet now, the kind of quiet that settles after a storm, when the air feels cleaner but heavier too. Margaret's Mercedes was long gone, its taillights swallowed by the Napa Valley dusk hours ago. The tasting room stood empty, candles burned down to stubs, the ledgers and contract locked back in the safe. I leaned against the guest house porch railing, the October chill biting through my jacket, watching the last of the workers haul grape baskets toward the crush pad. The vines stretched out under the fading light, their leaves curling like they were ready to let go. We'd faced the truth about Margaret, and it cost us, but we were still here. That was something. Daniel stayed. He'd lingered after the showdown, head down, offering to help clean up. "I messed up, Noah," he said, stacking glasses in the tasting room, his voice low. "But I want to fix it." I nodded, handing him a rag. He wasn't Margaret, just a kid caught in her shadow. Mom saw it too, giving him a quick hug before he headed to the guest house. Clara was different now, softer, like she'd shed a weight. "Your dad would be proud," she told me, her hand on my shoulder, her eyes red but steady. "You didn't let her win." Elise, still angry, was already planning. Talking about painting murals in the tasting room, making the vineyard ours again. Even Lucas, humbled for once, pulled me aside. "I was wrong about the sale," he said, rubbing his neck. "I'll crunch the numbers, find a way to clear the debts." It wasn't a promise of family dinners, but it was a start. The next morning, I took Dad's ashes to the Pinot block he loved best. The urn, a small oak cask he'd used for his favorite blends, felt heavy in my hands, the wood smooth from years of handling. I walked the rows alone, the soil crunching under my boots, the air sharp with fermenting grapes. I could almost hear Dad's voice joking about naming this row after me because I was stubborn as a vine. I knelt by the oldest vine, its trunk gnarled like his hands, and poured the ashes into the dirt, mixing them with my fingers. The contract's cost hit me then. Trust broken, a sister lost, years of lies uncovered. But we'd gained something too. The truth, raw and ours. I pressed the soil down, feeling Dad in every grain, every root. Back at the guest house, we sat around the dining table. No candles this time, just coffee and sunlight spilling through the windows. Mom spoke first, her voice firm. "We're keeping the vineyard." For Thomas, Elise grinned, sketching ideas for a new label. Lucas, still quiet, suggested redirecting profits to community wine programs. Tastings for locals, classes for kids, things Dad would have loved. He was all about connection, Lucas said, almost to himself. Daniel nodded, offering to run logistics. It wasn't perfect, but it was us, choosing the vineyard over Margaret's greed. I felt Dad's note in my pocket, its words, "Protect what we built," like a map I was finally ready to follow. I'd take the lead, not because I wanted to, but because Dad trusted me to. That evening I went to the cellar, the stone walls cool and familiar, the air thick with oak and thyme. I sat on a crate, the contract folded on a barrel beside a bottle of Dad's 2015 Cabernet, his pride and joy. I poured a glass, the wine dark and rich, and raised it to the empty room. "I'll keep it growing, Dad," I whispered, my voice rough. The cellar was silent, but it felt warm, like he was listening. I drank, the taste of blackberry and earth grounding me. The fight wasn't over. Debts to pay, wounds to heal, a family to rebuild. But I'd faced Margaret and won. For Dad, for us, I'd keep going. At dawn, I walked the vineyard, the sky pink and gold, the vines heavy with grapes ready for harvest. The rows stretched out, endless and alive, each one a piece of Dad's dream. I stopped by the Pinot block, the soil still dark where his ashes lay. The vineyard wasn't just land, it was us, flawed and stubborn but rooted deep. I started down the row, my boots kicking up dust, ready for whatever came next. A new chapter was beginning, and I'd make damn sure it was ours.